It's the adults' turn this afternoon, and as I said before we broke for lunch, we're starting with our, well, we've got MAPD, the Montserrat Association Persons with Disabilities. The first up, we're going to hear from the Vice President of that organisation, Mr. Steve Weeks, and Ms. Nyota Mulcair, who is the President of the Montserrat Civil Service Association. Can I ask those two individuals to come to the podium, please? Yes, why not? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, once again. I'm Nyota Mulcair, the President of the Montserrat Civil Service Association. I'm going to give a little bit of background of how it all began, why I became involved. So back in 2020 or thereabout, the association has two of its members who became disabled while they were adult during their work life. And these two individuals were not even 50 years yet. They were roughly at the same age, about 47. And it was important for the union to get involved to support its members. However, like I said before, the Montserrat did not adopt the convention, the ILO convention, to build within its structures the various support systems for persons with disabilities. So, of course, the union got involved at all levels. So what we did was to call on the Public Service International and the International Labour Organization to give support, to place some pressure on government to adopt these standards going forward. So with that, there was a consultancy which was done, so we did a whole project on it, and it was Mr. Craig Bruin who did that consultancy on behalf of ILO and the MCSA. And some of the things that we were looking for was to promote employment creation for persons with disabilities, fostering equal opportunities for persons with disabilities, ensuring adequate protection for all workers, accelerating the transition to formality, so this is what we're working towards, so make sure that we implement this policy and incorporate it within our standards like the education system and the health system and so on. Ensuring gender equality and non-discrimination, promoting equality, diversity and inclusion, realizing universal social protection, and promoting trade and development for a fair globalization and shared prosperity. So these are the things that we aimed for in terms of Montserrat to adopt the policy on disability. So in last year, as part of the ILO and PSI intervention, persons would have seen that Jester Weeks, who's one of that individual who went to Switzerland along with myself, so that we can start the ball rolling to ensure that Montserrat does adopt this into its system and that we go forward. So anybody that is coming behind will benefit or is not jeopardized, and that we'll have these things in place. So I will turn over to Jester, who will go in more in depth on the policy and exactly his experiences thus far. Come, Jester.
Good afternoon, one and all. Protocol already established. My role as Vice President of the MAPD is to equally ensure that all persons with disability is advocated for and cared for. I'm of the firm belief that all is important. The vision for MAPD is to advocate on people who are neurodiverse, people who are visually impaired, and all other different forms of disability. No one should be left behind. I became a member of MAPD, Montserrat Association for Persons with Disabilities, because not of self as a visually impaired person, but service to humanity. And in Montserrat, truth be told, people like me and others who are disabled are not on the agenda of no government. People like me and others are not on the agenda of no government. If you listen to the last budget speech, 230 million, you have not heard disability being mentioned in that budget. Aren't we lucky? By the way, I'm reading. With the great help of MCSA and the Caribbean unions, I was taken, and these were taken in its real term, to Switzerland, Geneva, at a conference, Public Service International 31st Conference, where all delegates from all over the world, Africa, just name it, they were there in Switzerland. And lo and behold, my case became headline for the ILO and PSI and all unions who represented that meeting. They wanted to know, where is Montserrat? And why is Montserrat in such a state regarding the rights of humans? Every morning, a Ugandan friend of mine, Jafra, weekends. I said, what, Jafra? Are you serious? Are you serious? About what? You don't have a job, you don't have a job. I said, yes, Jafra. In Montserrat, a British overseas territory, I don't have a job because I'm visually impaired. He could never fathom it. Because we down here in this part of the world strongly believe that the African continent is behind, but no, Montserrat is behind. Montserrat is behind when it comes to conformity of standards for people with disability. The truth be told, I'm not here to cover it. I'm here to talk it as it is. We are far behind because if your mother has a pound of sugar, you believe the sugar is yours as a child. And we are saying, as people with disability and who are being dealt with like we are nobody's children, if Britain is our mother, then if Britain is saying that you're disabled in England, you have certain rights, why don't we? Why don't we have the rights as the mother is saying? Then and therefore, you're not my mother then. You have disregarded me by having things put in place for you and not for your children. I once penned a song called Worthless Mother. And until the day that we could come equally and have the same rights as the people in the UK, then we are not doing anything. Politicians, we're not doing anything by talk shop. And money, I'm going to say it. When I hear them talk about it, is money is the reason why we are not pushing forward the agenda to get the rights for us here in Montserrat. Changes and laws. We know that the laws and general orders is draconian. We know. I'm old now and I've seen general orders from 1970s, 60s, how long? But general orders is what the higher power, the hierarchy of the system is using against people who are gainfully employed by government, and now you're sent home because general orders say section so and so equals so and so, go home. Now, while you were able, you took a mortgage of $300,000 to build a house because you say you want a place on the rock. After the addition, subtraction, and the whole formula, you lost your job with your expenses at your heel. And there's nothing in place to help you when you already signed that line to borrow X amount equal X amount a month. You're left now to struggle to the point where whatever I have to realize, is it the mortgage this month, or my children this month, or my food this month, or the bills this month? I strongly believe that when you are sent home medically boarded, there should be something in place to take up the slack somewhere. It is not impracticable. In fact, it's real. You are left now with no job, no income, and you are said no, you cannot be gainfully employed while you're on invalidity benefit. I am not invalid. I hate that word, invalid. I am valid. As a matter of fact, this morning I was surprised when the word was used, differently abled. Because this, my ability, is not the right place to go. I believe in the word differently abled. Right. We at MAPD is a struggling association with regards to numbers. But at the end of the day, where money is concerned, we are fighting a battle. Because I believe, again, my firm belief, that Montserrat government, social services, should have a desk designed for disability and their complaints. Because having been a constant person at social services over the past 4 years since I've had no job, since I have my difficulties, I realized that if there was a desk to say directly go to, with somebody who has been through their own struggle of disabled, and they're like-minded and they know how you feel, then it'll be an easier understanding. Not saying that social services don't have helpful people, helpful directors, helpful doctors, helpful everybody. I'm saying that if somebody's there who's disabled but can function to help the people who are disabled too, then I find it will be easier. For instance, over the past years, I've been taking an amputee to get a prosthetic leg measured. Today, May 7th, years after, person have died, and all now is just a measurement. It must be more than that. It must be, after several consultations, speaking to the person who's going to make the leg or provide the leg. We need a leg. They need different fittings for the leg. Why is it taking so long? Again, is it money? Please, 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 focus and realize that we, the disabled, are trying our best to live a normal, productive life. Because come the next few months, whether we are able to walk or talk, you'll be forced to the polls to make an X. Why aren't we having the same, why aren't we the same people you come and look after now? I'm realistic. I don't want to go around the bush with nobody. Disability lives matter. Disability lives matter, and let's not wait until someone dies to stroke them off the list and say, well, he's gone. no longer need to stress about his amputated leg or his prosthetic leg or his glasses or his consultations. Let's all be dealt with equally, because if you have 10 million or you have $1, we're all equal. And no one knows. I was at work 2018, writing a song in the canteen, and my vision went. I didn't expect that day what's going to happen. So I said this, none of us here knows what the next hour brings. Let's all treat each other with respect, and people with disability have the same rights as the people who are able, because our day is not too far away. Thank you.
Thank you, Iceman Steve Weeks, a powerful testimony there. Thank you very much for that. There's a lot in what you said. In terms of the desk, disability desk, I think there was plans or talk of a gender desk and perhaps pairing that with a disability desk. I'm not sure whether that's still in the, on the agenda, but it was there. Maybe it may come back. In terms of terminology, now that's an area contested in terms of how we call people with a disability. I just say that the term disabled person is meant to more talk to society disabling the person than the person not being able to do something themselves. So it's about a person with impairment being disabled by the barriers in society that it throws up. So it's not meant to describe the individual and what they can't do. It's meant to be. But amongst disabled groups themselves, there's still discussions about what they call it. So we leave it there, otherwise we'll be here for. But suffice to say, Steve Weeks, it's always good to get a personal testimony. It brings it home a lot more, so thank you for that. We do have the president of MAPD, hopefully, waiting for us, and follow together with the campaigns manager of MAPD, the Montserrat Association of Persons with Disability. So the president is Harjinder Jatul, or Jatli. Are you there, Harjinder?
Can you hear me?
Ah, good. Nice and clear. And we can see.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we can see your slide. We can see your slide.
You can see the slides?
We can see the slides. We can't see you, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think the slides.
I don't know why, because I seem to be in a corner.
That's okay. That's
anyway,
all right. We can see the slides. So over to you. Thank you.
I'm still as gorgeous as I was before. So according to somebody, you know, I was going to turn the first slide upside down, which, and I was going to kick off with, firstly, really privileged and honoured to be invited here. It's fantastic to see, you know, this meeting come together. And for me, that's progression. So people that know me, I am registered blind. So when people say, can you look into the camera? And I say, well, where's the camera? I don't know where the camera is. You know, you can give me a 50-inch screen and I still don't know where the camera is. So, you know, forgive me for that. Well, I don't know about forgive me, but so I just wanted to firstly, as I said, just acknowledge some people that have worked really, really hard to get us to this point. And
recording in progress.
To my brother Jester, I just want to say, you know what, you're incredible. And I'm really impressed that you're, after all this, still fighting. And I'm very disappointed in the way that you were treated by the government and, you know, just kind of ignored really. And we've seen some of the struggles that you've been through and, you know, probably another discussion, another testimony for another day. So can people still hear me okay? Yeah, Sinclair, can you still hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, good. So it's just that something funny came up on my screen, and I've got my support worker here. So I was gonna start from the bottom up and say I'm registered blind. I've been registered blind since about the age of I started losing my sight when I was about 8, and it progressively got worse. And I attended a mainstream school, so I was never part of a separate system or got special assistance and all the rest of it. And Craig and I worked out earlier, I was probably in my 30s, early 30s, when it was cool to be disabled if you worked and you could get support. So a lot of things started kind of changing. And for me, it's about progressive technology and about building support around your individual need. We still get grouped together about, if you're visually impaired, this works for you. If you're, hard of hearing, this works. If you're in a wheelchair, this works. So we do get kind of pigeonholed quite a bit. What I want to focus on in the first slide is I've been privileged to be the president for MAPD for probably since 2017, I'd say. And again, I want to recognise that Agnes Lempriere was leading MAPD before then and doing a lot. And everybody's been given their time up voluntarily. Most people work either full time or are involved. So it's never been a paid kind of group like other countries that have organisations that champion disability. We've never had that. We've always been a group of volunteers that come together to promote the cause. And I'll talk a bit later about how much we've done, because I believe that we've been an integral part of the campaign and pushing. And we've been really fortunate to have so many amazing people, come on the board and come and try and include us in things. So that's been brilliant. We are I'm the secretary for DPI NAC, which is Disabled People International, North America and the Caribbean. And we were the first, I was the first person elected on a global sort of stage for Montserrat to have that position. And I think we could have taken a lot of advantage from that, being, then having a seat on the the World Commonwealth Council as well. I'm still part of DPI NAC, even though I've returned to the UK. So that gives us some good, power base to keep championing on. So, I think that we can use those platforms. And I think Craig will talk a bit more about the significance of some of those platforms. Let's see if I can multitask. I think in my slide, I've sort of very briefly said I was the head of procurement from 2017 to 2022 as a disabled woman in the government, and probably were able to flag up some things because I had that level of exposure. But it's still disappointing, the lack of kind of support. I had to bring my own equipment from England, there was no recognition, and people didn't kind of want me to highlight the fact that I was registered blind. So people just quietly ignored it. And I think they thought I was deaf as well, because there would be whispers about me. So, but, having said that, I work with some amazing colleagues. So I'm now currently the head of commercial for Slough Borough Council, so a big organisation. And I do get support. I get a full-time support worker, I get equipment, and that just goes to show how, coming back to the UK, I get full support around my disability. But yet, if you look at the overseas territories, they're just ignored. And I think Craig will talk a bit more about that. So I kind of want to sort of set the scene. And without the technology and the human guide support I have, I could not do the job that I do. Because the bottom line is, the disabled people are expected to deliver exactly the same as an able-bodied person. And people don't look at the fact that we might do things differently, we might need more time. So there's a long way to go. Even though in England, we have all these policies, there's still a long way to go. And I'm kind of doing some awareness raising around what it means, what a reasonable adjustment means. And we flag that word a lot. People think reasonable adjustments are a one-off thing. Do it once and we don't have to worry. We've ticked the box, we've done a reasonable adjustment, go away. And that's still a problem and an issue. So anyway, the second slide has got, I've been told, beautiful people on it. So I can see Jester on it and myself, and I'm sure there's other gorgeous people on there. But let's not forget. Let's celebrate the things we did do well. You know, we had blind football and International Disability Day. We've done walks, talks. We've been on the radio. There's a real community spirit around supporting people with disabilities. I find that people come together to support each other, regardless of whether the government takes any notice or not. People are, you know, there's goodwill, good community spirit, and people are always willing to help. What I do find is often people don't want to talk about their disability because they feel if they bring it to the forefront, they're going to be viewed very differently. And they just want to get on with life. They want to get on with what they need to get on with. And that's fine. So membership for MAPD has been quite difficult because people don't want to be part of a group that identifies with needs because they don't want to be singled out. And we've tried the whole thing around, you know, people being involved in, you know, certain parts of the organisation. What do they want to do? What do they need? So it varies, but we've often ended up with people that are able-bodied trying to help with policy. So membership drives what we do. And again, as I said, you know, we've done some amazing things. We've, you know, just carried on. As an organisation, we had a joint equipment store. We've done, you know, fundraising. We've done all sorts of things. And so we are blessed that we've had people that have helped us on our journey. I know, you know, Veronica Dorset has been our champion, trying to sort of steer us forward. Teresina, Sinclair, Liston. We've had lots of people that have been helping us, you know, Claude Hogan. So I think there is a willingness, but I think people don't know how to turn that willingness and support into something tangible. We'll touch on that later. I'm going to now hand over to Craig Bruin, who is our head of campaigns, who does a lot of work behind the scenes in getting our voices heard. You know, voluntarily, I couldn't do some of the things that he does, but I want him to set the framework for the legal position that we have in terms of, you know, signing up to the CRPD Convention on the Rights of Disabled People and some of the work that he's done. And so I'm going to hand over to him and then I'll pick up again. Craig, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Wonderful. There you go. Slide 3.
Do you want to put a slide on? I can't see the slides. Ah, there we go. Yeah, so yeah, we went through this earlier in the day. We have prepared this, and we have been listening in on the event today as well. On the language thing, it doesn't matter. We're a member of 2 international bodies, the Commonwealth Disability Forum and DPI NAC. They both use terminology, and Commonwealth Disability Forum in particular say really don't worry about it. You call it what you like locally, but providing you understand what we mean by this language is the most important thing. The purpose of this slide, and Harjinder passed this over to me earlier, is really just so people understand the legal framework that disability operates in within Montserrat. When I first went to Montserrat, which is 2017, people used to say to me, "Oh, we're not signed up to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability," as if that was a problem. It's not a problem. All that means is that you're not being audited by the UN. Sinclair earlier, I think it was very at the start of the session, talked about the report that was produced by UNICEF on children in 2016. That was produced because they have to audit Montserrat because Montserrat signed up to the convention, but they don't audit us on disability. Still have to do it. It's government policy, British government policy, that all British overseas territories sign up to it. And when it's comply with it, and when there is compliance, they'll roll it out and you get your gold medal. You can't say, "I haven't got my gold medal yet, so I'm not going to do it." Everyone's meant to be working towards it, and that's the legal framework. There was a resolution passed, believe it or not, little known, but there was a resolution passed at the General Assembly of the United Nations. I think it was in 29, specifically on Montserrat and disability, because Montserrat was deemed to be behind the rest of the world, more than any other place in the world. That's an island of 4,500 people, so that's hardly surprising. But what they were calling for, they weren't telling Montserrat off. They were saying you really need to get more support from the British government and to pursue this agenda with them because you can't do this on your own. So it was a criticism of the British government, who sees themselves as being global leaders on disability. They have a really, really good, strong disability framework underpinning their overseas aid. But when it comes to Montserrat, it seems to get forgotten. And the UN, the resolution came, if you remember, it came about because of the UN mission, the Donaldson Romeo inspired mission to Montserrat from the UN. And one of the main things that came out of that mission was that UN resolution saying British government has got to support Montserrat more on addressing these disability issues. They recognise it can't sign up to it. But there are lots of other things there are lots of other things that Montserrat's meant to comply with. And a few years ago, we did a list of every single piece of legislation, policy, framework, grant condition that Montserrat had to comply with, most of which I think had not been read properly. Any aid that comes from the EU has to be spent in compliance with the European Convention. And one of our frustrations with the tourism strategy is it didn't mention disability, but it was a requirement of the funding agreement that it did address them. But because there's no framework, there's no committee, there's no board, there's no disability board, there's no disability legislation, people don't really know how to respond to this grant condition or really what it means. So a lot of it is understanding. I mean, just a week's speech, incredibly powerful. I do wish I could speak like him. But he was talking about the Labour Code. He was talking about the general orders. Montserrat's general orders and Montserrat's Labour Code are completely at odds with each other. Montserrat has to follow the European Convention of Human Rights. All European overseas territories, whatever their status, have to follow the European Convention of Human Rights. The European Convention of Human Rights is enshrined in the Montserrat Constitution. Montserrat's Labour Code was designed to make sure those constitutional protections were delivered. Montserrat's general orders were written about 150 years ago and do not in any way reflect modern labour standards or the international labour conventions that Montserrat is sent up to. So that I would say, now I'm not on the island anymore, I can't get chased off, I would say that Montserrat's general orders are illegal in their entirety because they're littered with discrimination against women, with disabled people, and all sorts of practices that would breach the Labour Code. And I believe, and I'm never going to take this to court, the general orders are illegal and the government should not be following them. And there is no mention of disability, which is why, to some extent, language is important. There is no mention of disability in Montserrat's general orders at all. What it refers to is infirmity. So you need to know what you mean by this. Jester Weeks was dismissed because he was infirm. But it's illegal under Montserrat's labour laws to dismiss somebody who is disabled. So is Jester Weeks disabled or is he too infirm to work? In the UK, under the Equality Act, he could not have been dismissed. The requirement would be that he be redeployed or that to a job that he can do. I can't believe there were no jobs in the government that he could do. And or he's given the adjustments he needs to do the job. Obviously, if you drive, that's quite difficult. But Jinder gets by because she has software and she has equipment and she has a support worker, which are provided to her by the Department of Work and Pensions. Department of Work and Pensions, by the way, is meant to be supporting Montserrat on disability. It's in the white paper that governs the relationship between the UK and Montserrat. So when I was first told, and I started looking at this because I was told this when I first came to Montserrat, there is no disability framework, there is no disability legislation. That is true. There is no Disabled People's Act in Montserrat. That does not exist. There is a brilliant one in Cayman, which is named after a disabled person who was murdered. And there are ones in other territories as well, but not in Montserrat. But there is a legal framework. If you know it, there is a legal framework. You just have to look at what the law says, what the Constitution says, what the ECHR says. You have to look at what the policies say, what DFID's policies or FCADO's policies are. You have to look at the grant conditions. The reason we were paid to do the consultation on the port was because CDB could not build a port without doing the audit for disability audit. It's a requirement of CDB because they work to the European Convention on Human Rights, and they work to the CRPD because that's part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Caribbean Development Bank has to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. So there is a huge network. And in the strategy that you're writing now and Montserrat's Sustainable Development Plan, all that needs to be pulled together. And we need to operate like the CDP and just go, well, don't forget the disability aspects. We're required to do it. I've gone on too long on this slide, Jinder. It's your turn next.
Okay, that was brilliant. Thank you, Craig. I think that really set the scene. And as I said, Craig does a lot of work. He's been doing, lots of papers and submissions. He went and spoke about disability at the Harkin Institute in Ireland. And I know he's done lots of, any opportunity he gets to respond to something, he will. And also he's kept that kind of legacy of challenging things through his blog and other things. And I think he raised a lot of issues via his blog, and people became quite scared of the blog, actually. I was once asked by one of the politicians to ask him to stop doing his blog because they were presenting the government in a bad light. He wasn't. He was talking about disability and things like that. So I think that when voices get loud, and similar to what Jester was saying earlier, then people think about how can we quash that voice. And I'm very disappointed, actually, with the way not just the government, but the governor dealt at the time, not the current governor, dealt with Jester, because it was a really simple, Jester and I went to see the governor, and it was a really simple thing of just looking at how that medical boarding happened, because he wasn't treated fairly in that process. He wasn't invited. He wasn't allowed to bring someone with him. It was done to him without his knowledge. And that's really, really not fair. So that was actually quite a horrible way. And I really wish the government at the time had stepped up a bit more. It's great to invite people in for little meetings and a cup of coffee, but then not to do anything with it is appalling. And I think Craig and I often say we've had meetings with, FCDO, DFID previously, and talked about disability, but they're just meetings. Nothing kind of happens. And the next slide is talking about, things that we have committed, we have contributed to. I'm going to pick on the first one, which is the web design. We were never, ever consulted on the web design. It was incompatible. It didn't work with many things. And I, as a government officer, said, I can't access it through my Zoom text. I can't work with it. And it was completely ignored. There was no evaluation criteria about how it was going to meet the needs, of wider people. It was just designed, kind of dumped upon us, and that's it. The port that Craig mentioned, there was a lot of consultation from the CDB because they have to consult. And again, we saw the Stantec report, which had lots of recommendations, and there was going to be a consultation. And then the next thing, it was pulled. So I've got here the national, the national support sports strategy. That was actually really, really good, and we were consulted about that. The older people strategy we were consulted with. There's a lot of consultation that happens with MAPD, and we're alluded to as the experts, go to them. And I know that when we talked about the disability desk and in Legislative Assembly, one of the ministers actually said, well, we don't need to do anything as government because we've got MAPD. I think quite right, we get about £1,000 a year, if that. I know the Red Cross get a bigger grant, but that sort of kind of just shows you about the importance and the value of the work we do. I know, Red Cross are about, disaster recovery, and I will pick it up here, but when we've had hurricanes and when we've had, COVID, there was a lot of reliance, off our own intuition. We, MAPD, coupled with Red Cross to make sure that our vulnerable people, our people that we know of, were then supported. That's not everybody, but unless we know where people are and what their vulnerabilities are, we can't support them. So trying to grapple around, we pulled together lists of people that we were aware of that had a need, and that's they had vulnerable children and families, but not disabled people. So that was a kind of another big thing. So consultation, we get consultation, but then nothing happens. We don't hear back from it. I don't think I can talk about toilets actually, because it makes me just so angry, because we did a lot of work and a lot of consultation around toilets, and MAPD were very, very clear that this is where people tend to go to for, beach, or the beaches that we used. And then we had these horrible, ugly toilets, scattered about, spoiling some of our beaches. And then they were dangerous. I mean, people were talking about, oh, don't worry, we'll just put I can't even remember the term they used, a ramp. And then I think that's where Craig was sort of, ramp doesn't solve everything. A ramp, again, it's about people pigeonholing and saying, oh, if you're disabled and you've got a wheelchair, a ramp will do, and that's it. And we focused just on that. So, that wasn't particularly helpful. Let's look on the next slide is about, let me just have, nothing. So we have because we're part of DPI NEC, MAPD, we have this slogan that says, nothing about us without us. And it makes me think about a lot of people saying, look, if I want to go and see the premiere, do I have to climb up the stairs? I can't get there. And some of the good examples of where we have been consulted was the FSC building. Now I was on their board. So was I consulted as a procurement professional and had an input? Great. But not all of us can get to those tables. Not all of us have a say. Not all of us can get to the, be the speakers at these different things to inform, shape what we do. So, it's great having a slogan. It's great saying, we need to be visible. We need to be there. And it feels as if people want to consult us when it suits them. But what happens with that consultation beyond that point kind of just goes into some abyss. Hospital, we talked about, the needs of people and the hospital. And I think that took a good few years. I don't know kind of what's happened with it since. But if you want real engagement, real consultation, then people need to be talking to the right groups. And I think that's where sometimes Craig and I did a whole list of all the different voluntary groups for the FCDO. I don't know how many times we've shared that list and said, look, these are all the groups. This is how you can engage. And it's a real mishmash. Even in my own time there, it was, somebody's coming from the Commonwealth, somebody's coming from here. But I'm sure that's because I was the head of procurement, and that's why I was engaged, not because it wasn't because I had a disability. So, something kind of there as well. But the last slide talks about, and I think this has been very clear about what is it that we want. And I think that, general orders just need to go. I mean, they are awful. They are discriminatory in their own right. I've been the, recipient of general orders, but we do need a policy that actually aspires to the CRPD. Even it doesn't matter whether we're signed up or not, and I think we need to kind of get over that. But we should be working to that anyway. So I think it's a kind of commitment statement that says this is what we expect, this is what we want, this is how we want to be engaged, this is what we need to be doing. So I think that based on some of the really good practice, some of the good things that we have done, I think we need to sort of pat ourselves on the back and say we do have a voice, we have people that have an expectation, and we're not just a group of people that will go away somewhere. And I was quite saddened when I heard Jester say that, somebody's waiting for a prosthetic and eventually they just died. And I do wonder sometimes whether people think eventually we'll just go away. It's who shouts the loudest, who's more important. So I think we have to kind of keep going. But I think on a bigger kind of global level, we need to be learning off some of the other islands. St. Lucia and I think St. Kitts and others are signed up to the CRPD. And I think that's a good platform to launch ourselves from and say, look, we're part of this group. we've got to keep going. But I think it's now, we do need to be forcing the hand of FCDO to take responsibility. And I really like Jester's point when he said, you know, we're sort of parentless. Craig and I are part of something called FOTBOT, which is Friends of the British Overseas Territories. And we are constantly saying there, you know, you say we're a family, but you don't treat us like family, because we end up with the crumbs under your table all the time. So there is something there that we need to be sort of saying, if we're equal partners, if we're in this together and you treat us like a family, then show us that you're treating us like a family, and stop ignoring issues that you don't want to take on because there might be funding attached. So anyway, I'm going to stop there because I could go on for a long time. But I think my final closing statement will be, there's some things we've done which are brilliant. And I really want to acknowledge Teacher King, because he spearheaded some of these things and really held the baton in terms, you know, and sadly he's passed away. But I think, you know, it is that thing of I personally, from personal perspective, don't like the word disabled, because I'm not disabled. I'm an individual with certain needs, and I think everybody has different needs. And I think it's understanding how we can, you know, fully function, be participants within society, and, you know, be part of a process system. And it's society that tends to disable us. So, you know, for example, if I go somewhere, they say, oh, you have to have a presentation, you have to do this, you have to do that. If you're blind, you can't do it. So, you know, we have to sort of think about people as individuals, and we don't, it's not, you know, one size fits all, and we all visually impaired people use this program and it works for them. I think it is recognizing that we are individuals, and that we are very clear about our own, you know, limitations and what we can, and it's what we can do. We have so much to bring, we have so much to give, and we just want to be able to be included. You know, and I will go back to our lovely jingle, because I think it was a great piece of work that MAPD did, as well as the SEM project that we funded. We are shakers and movers, and we do, you know, take on what we can when we can. And I think we've done some amazing work. And the board has been absolutely brilliant, and all our partners around us. So I'll end on that note, that I think we've got more to do, but I think we'll just keep going and doing all the things that we commit ourselves to. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig and Arjinda. We know that since 2017, both of you have been critical friends to Montserrat, and stalwart advocates for the disabled on Montserrat for all that time. So we thank you very much for that. And you continue to do it even though you're not here. So we're grateful for that. So stay there a minute. I think we may, if anybody's got any questions they would like to ask either Craig or Arjinda, or indeed Mr. Weeks, Steve Weeks, or Nyota Mulcair, please sing up now. Any questions at all for Craig and Arjinda?
People can always send things through.
Right.
You know, you've got our email addresses. I mean, we do. I mean, both Craig and I are very passionate about the things that we started and the things that we're trying to do, and we will continue our support. I have no issue with continuing what we're doing. Montserrat gets under your skin. Somebody said that to me years ago, and I suppose being a disabled woman, you know, I want to contribute as much as I can with, you know, it's a tiny little organisation. I mean, Nadia has been there from 2012 and just ran things, and it's incredible. You know, it's really sad we lost Teacher King, Thomas O'Gara, you know, Agnes, because they were the people that ran it. You know, they were the people that did things, you know, and I think that it's about how do we carry on that legacy, that work, because MAPD is known as one of the kind of key organisations, you know, that do things. I mean, somebody rang me recently and wanted a white cane, and said, "Oh, could you send a white cane if we send you the measurements? And I said, yeah, we can send you a white cane. Because we have the ability to do things like that. There's some basic equipment people need, not always wheelchairs, but again, it's about how do we match or support that need, and you know, kind of going forward. And we can turn around and say, oh, it's the government's responsibility, they need to do it, but we're always looking for someone else to do it, and we can't just sit there, well, somebody needs a white cane, and say, oh, well, go to the government, they should do it. So I think it is a mixture of duty of care. It is a mixture of, you know, supporting people and their needs, but being realistic at the end of the day. We're all in it together. We're all, you know, as you said earlier, Sinclair, it's an aging population. You know, we've got children now that with their needs, and we saw those needs highlighted through the SEN report that we did years ago. But you know, sadly, we do have organisational memory loss because people come, people go. And it's amazing, you know, people that are around the table today that keep carrying on. And I think when we've got that willingness to keep carrying on, you've got people that actually care about the cause and want to be part of it, you know, that's the best thing we can do. Is just keep going.
Indeed.
I'll stop now.
Okay, thank you very much. And you've given us much food for thought. So there's no questions, I think, coming through. So we'll say goodbye for you now, and hopefully you keep watching. Oh, there is a question? Okay.
Not a question for, per se. I just want to use this opportunity to thank Craig and Hagenda. They've been from day one. I'm one of the founders for the organization. It started quite a while ago under Stella Owen, and I must say that Hajinda and Craig they have worked really hard to keep it going. At one point, I thought this is it. There would be nobody to continue the legacy, but they had stepped in. They have worked very hard, and I want to say, on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Social Services, a big thank you. You'll hear the break in my voice because I know they put in the work. And thank you very much. And if there's any way I can support this organization from my end as the director, I will do that. So thank you very much, Craig and Hagenda. And also, Jester. Jester has been fighting, and I can tell you, and constantly knocking at my door in a good way, Mm-hmm. So we hope in social services and the Ministry of Health and Social Services will continue to work and do what we need to do to support. All right?
Okay, great.
Thank you, Terry. That's really kind. And, you know, it's people like yourself and Jester and others that kind of keep us on our toes. And as I said, you know, Montserrat gets under your skin, and we still feel really passionate about Montserrat. In fact, we've been doing some fundraising and things like that. So, you know, you can rely on our support, and together, they always say, together we can. And it's really close to my heart, being disabled myself. So, you know, all I can say to you is we will continue to commit time, energy, you know, with the platforms that we have, and just keep going.
All right. Okay, that's it. Any more questions? No. Okay, Hajinda and Craig, thank you very much. We say goodbye at this point.
We can go to bed now.
Yes. Okay. Sweet dreams.
Good night. God bless.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so we're going to do some more work now. So this is an adults rather than children. We're going to replicate what we did this morning. So in your groups, you're going to identify the strengths, the weakness, the opportunities and the threats in terms of adults with disabilities in Montserrat. Let me give you some headings to stimulate your discussion. So you can use what was discussed just then, but under a number of different categories. There's employment, there's accessibility, it could be under discrimination, it could be under education and training, further education and training. We're talking about adults now. Could be legislation or lack of, a lot of reference to the general orders. Any document that's 150 years old could probably stand some updating. And about, legislation in terms of there's no legislation to protect adults with disabilities in Montserrat at the moment. There's no legislation, unlike for children. So there's a number of headings there. Maybe you can find some strengths in there, maybe you can find some weaknesses and opportunities and the threats, but please finish up with a few priorities. We need some priorities, and they may replicate some of what you came up for children, but remember there's a difference in terms of adults, in terms of employment, it's a big one, and discrimination continues. We heard that children with disabilities are invisible in Montserrat. How visible are adults with disabilities? Oftentimes, how many blind people do you see waiting for a bus? We have no pavement. How many people do you see trying to walk and navigate the road, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's, as we said before, there's a lot to do. But in your groups, like you were this morning, please put together some strengths and some weaknesses and then come up with some priorities. And then we're going to take you at the end some feedback, and then we're going to close and wrap up the day. So off we go again. In your groups, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think that's a QR code if you want to use that for the adults. So please use that. If not, you can write it down on that paper, but we need to be able to get that paper at the end of the day, so make it legible. Make it legible. So the SWOT analysis followed by the priorities. Okay. Yes. Some more forms are coming. but you've definitely identified some priorities we need to look at for adults. So without further ado, we will get your views on that, on those discussions. Let me see, any volunteers? Anyone wants to get it over with? Can you get, sorry? I didn't hear that. Does that mean you want to come up? Yeah, yes, come, Deanne, come. Prize money, did you say? It's for the greater good. All right, let's encourage Deanne up to the podium. Thank you, Deanne.
Just priority one. Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Okay. So we decided that the main priority, the first priority, sorry, would be to design, again, data collection, but we wanted to collect two sets of data, the needs of the SEND persons and their skills. And that would include designing instruments, collecting and analyzing the data, and having that data pool so that we can then create what we call a cross-agency team. This will be to recruit persons with mixed expertise. We're hoping, because the island is small, we can recruit, so let's say persons from the MDPA, training and development persons, legal persons, specialists. So once we have that cross-agency team, that team will now move forward to help with the development of the national policy or policy for the adults. And that would include a sensitization workshop for the entire population, strategic workshops where we'll do what we did here today, SWOT analysis and so on, analyzing the environment, and then doing our policy writing workshops, drafts and finals and so. And finally, out of that, we will develop programs at two levels. Support programs, this will cater to their basic needs, whether it's that they have need for spectacles, things to move them around, whether it's wheelchairs and so on, and then career development programs, and those would target their skills. When we were doing the SWOT, what stood out for us is that Montserrat is so safe that we felt that Montserrat could benefit from having a differently abled institute, not that name, of course, because of its safety. And if we were able to develop an institute where you have persons taught different skills and so on, you could have your own little entrepreneurial hub just for the differently abled, and they can function. Because if I'm to make reference to like Trinidad, where you have the Blind Welfare League and they do basket work and so on, but in this case, because Montserrat is so safe and you can look at what we need around the place and you can have that whole entrepreneurial guide, the business aspect, the building of skills and so on. And of course, you will also want to prepare persons to fit into the normal workplace as well. So those two areas, support and career development and skills. We see those as, I didn't go right through, should I have told you a lead agency? I didn't do all of that. It's there, but I'm not going to go through. So the four areas: design and collect the data, create the cross-agency team, develop the national policy, and out of the national policy, we're going to develop the programs. And all of this, hopefully by 2027.
Eminently achievable too. Next up. Seeing as you're looking, Dr. Amara? Yeah. Or anyone at your table?
Okay, so we have 5 priorities. The first one is to all buildings to be accessible to people with disabilities, for example, ramps, elevators, tactile paving, etc. Action to be taken, legislation to be put in place, building codes or building regulations. And the lead agency, we feel it's the Ministry of Communication and Works. Priority number 2, employment opportunities, collaborating with businesses to promote inclusive hiring practices, provide incentives for hiring people with disabilities, and offering vocational training and support services. Priority number 3, social inclusion programs, implementing social inclusion programs and initiatives to foster community engagement and reduce social isolation amongst people with disabilities.
Priority number 4, legal protections, and that includes strengthening legal protections and advocacy efforts to uphold the rights of people with disabilities, including anti-discrimination laws and accessibility regulations. And the 5th priority involves community engagement, and this is encouraging community involvement and consultation with people with disabilities to ensure that their voices are heard in decision-making processes and that policies are responsive to their needs.
Nice and comprehensive. All right, we move swiftly on to that group behind. Yeah. Okay.
I've actually pulled a short straw today, so I'm the one to be presenting. All right, let me start with our priorities. Just to say, we looked at how we identify people here on Montserrat with disabilities. And that is where our focus went with regard looking at how we identify people so they don't slip through the net. So our first priority, we were looking at the MAPD and in offering them more support financially and also getting more recognition for them. And the action we took is to broaden their membership, that is opening up the membership up to not just persons with disability. And we are hoping this can be done by the end of 2024. And we are saying the lead agency would be the Ministry of Health and Social Services. And for our next priority, we looked at encouraging more people with disabilities to stand up and get recognized. That is, as you've seen with Mr. Weeks, he was quite vocal and he actually championed his own corner. So we would encourage people to stand up more and be more recognized. And that was our second priority. And then the action for that, we were raising more awareness, more so like this workshop today, encouraging people to be aware of what disability policies are. When, we are saying every month, if possible. I know it's a hard ask, but at least making sure that people in the offices are aware that they're people with disability or people with limited ability. And the lead agencies we were looking at, we are saying straight across the whole board of the whole of the civil service, all of the agencies, just a collaborative agencies. Priority 3, we were looking at how we will gather the information about people who've got disability, that is making people more aware of who in our employment are disabled. And we looked at whether or not this can be implemented as part of your national statistics census that you do. I'm not sure if you do it annually or when you do the census, but what we were looking at, whether or not this could be implemented as part of your census that the statistics department undertake. That is, instead of just finding out people in the household, whether or not when you go to do that annual census, not sure if it's annual or every 3 years or how long you do it. My apologies, I don't know that part. But we were thinking, when you gather that information, whether or not you could find out who in the household got any kind of form of disability, and that can be included in the statistic gathering there. And then the action is to encourage persons to be more open and to talk about their disability. And we are hoping that can be implemented in the next census if possible. And the lead agency there will be statistic. Another thing that we actually looked on as a priority was trying to find out disabilities within the workplace. That is undertaking, I'm not sure if you know about DSEs, that is desktop support with your equipment, so we could identify people who got limited visual impairment, hearing impediment, people who have back problems. If all of these can be identified early, then we are able to kind of be able to identify people who've got these disabilities, and as such, the support and the resources may be targeted at these people. That's as far as we got. I thank you.
Well, some great ideas there. I think the census is every 10 years, except I think there's a household census before that. And actually, leading up to this event, I did contact the census to say, did you have any results from the census just before Christmas regarding disabilities? They said they did gather information, but it's not available as yet. Don't know if anyone from census office is here, but they have got that information, but it's not released as yet. And MAPD would be happy for your call for more finance, I'm sure. And their membership at the moment is open to non-disabled people. So anybody in here can join MAPD. Anybody at all can join MAPD. You don't have to have a disability. In fact, people without a disability are good advocates and good supporters for people with disabilities. It's good to work together in partnership. All right, thank you. Next group, the middle group. Let's take Christian's group. Yeah, good, good.
Good afternoon. All right, so our three priorities were completing and implementing the policy. We heard that there was a framework available, and we thought that it was important to complete or update that framework complete the frame. There are gaps in the framework. We need to complete it. We need to exactly determine what needs to be implemented, and the action is to obviously conduct consultations and establish committees with different stakeholders like these ones here. So we have to continue the process that we've started here. That process, a first draft by November 2025. So good work, Social Service Department, for getting the initiative started, and you'll be continuing the journey. The next one is awareness and promotion. Of course, we have to, as we've said before, we have to get into the communities and promote the work that needs to be done. We need greater awareness for the differently able communities, and it is important that we sensitize the public through different mediums, including. Do you have a television station here? I've not watched television. No? Oh, it just occurred to me, you know, seriously, it just occurred to me, I haven't seen any. I know there's a radio station, of course. Yeah, but social media, we got radio, and of course we need to sensitize the public, but we also need to go into the communities, all right? So that's supposed to be an ongoing program, and it starts as soon as possible. And finally, funding with all the infrastructural needs, the human resource needs, the different things that need to be put in place. We need funding. And one of the greatest challenges we have is the M word, right? Because we need the funding and because we need the financing, we need to advocate, we need to write proposals, and we need to raise money for funding, because nothing gets done without the money. So that's our presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, many thanks. Many thanks for that. We move swiftly on to, I think Mr. Neptune State. Ms. Fergus again, Judah. Okay. Brittany.
All right. So, our first priority is legislation and policy framework. The action to be taken is to draft and update laws, have consultations with the with the MAPD and also creating anti-discriminatory laws. And also we need data collection so we can have a database. We want this by the next financial year, 2025-2026. And of course, it is multi-agency with the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health and Social Services and MAPD. Number 2, budgetary allocations. So advocate for data for political buying and place budget. So also financial support for equipments and welfare. By 2025-2026, this is also a multi-agency task for the Ministry of Health and Social Services, Education, Physical Plan, and MAPD again. Pardon? 7. Yes. Number 3, priority. Sensitize the public, carers, and professionals. So we would create workshops using the media, creating flyers to be advertised in the school compounds, in business places, in the libraries, and other places of work. And also programs for different persons with different disabilities. And we want this by 2025-2026. The lead agency, it is multi-agency again with the Montserrat Association, Persons with Disability, Ministry of Health and Social Services, Ministry of Education, and so on. Number 4, train personnel, resources, and tools. Partnership with organizations of UNICEF, UK, and etc. So for this, it will be resources provided by both the public and private sector in which we, the government, would allocate the budget we need for these resources and so. And maybe we can have the private sector sell the resources that we need at a reasonable price. And we want this by 2025. And this is also multi-agency for both the public and private sector. Number 5, access to employment, inclusions. The actions to be taken is creating a skills database, ensures resources for access in case when a person with a disability is employed. So, and also we'll have, if a person with disability has not only the skills and qualifications, we'll make sure they have that equal opportunity to get the job. And this is by 2025, and also a multi-agency with HR, the private sector, and Montserrat associations with persons with disabilities. All right, so that's it.
Great, thank you. Database, yes, we must use technology, harness the power of technology. And let me see, in terms of quotas, whether people here would support affirmative action in terms of disabled persons so that the government has to set aside a number of jobs just for people with disabilities. I'll leave that one in the air for you at the moment. And okay, so that's just in there for you to think about. The group of 3. Did you you did that? Who have I missed? Who have I missed? Yes, come on. And it was the first time carers was mentioned in that group, and they're an important part of this. So thank you for that.
All right, this is the group of 4, and our first priority is to increase accessibility. And we looked at promoting universal designs, for example, the buses and the walkways. We look at the buildings. I know there was at one point when the Montserrat Association for Persons with Disabilities came on stream, we were included in the designs, like for the road coming down Braids next to the Red Cross. We would have taken a few disabled persons there. and they looked at it and decided whether or not it was accessible for the persons with disabilities. So we need to look at it so that persons can travel as they feel like, go on the buses, walk up the ramps. When we look at the buildings that are being built now, we need to be included in the designs so that persons can freely travel however they want and get upstairs. Like you look at public works and you have 40 steps going up there, somebody's gonna have to come downstairs. So when do we want to have that done by? December 2025. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And we look at MCWLE and we look at MATLE, because we look at physical planning and we look at public works. The next priority, enhancing education and training. And of course, we want persons to be able to be more, to be included more, and so that we can go on the radio. We were thinking of asking for a slot on ZJB radio, so we can start education and get persons to accept persons with disabilities, and to actually ask persons to come forward, because some of us, we hide in our shell because we think that we are being discriminated against. So we want persons to come out of their shell and to get the support that they need. So we are going to develop and expand our vocational programs. When? September 2025, and it's the Ministry of Education that would be the lead agency. And I take this sentence from Dr. Julius: education is the most powerful tool that can change the world today. The next priority is combat stigma and discrimination, and the action to be taken is to implement awareness programs. So we are going to go, as I said, go on the radio, have little groups, form little groups, include persons like yourself, because we are going to be disabled very soon. I look at persons coming up the steps today, and I know that we are going to come and get your space in the association, please. And by then, so we are looking at September 2020. We're going to have little programs, meet the groups in the communities, and so we get on board. And so our lead agency is the Montserrat Association for Persons with Disabilities. The next one is legislation, and so we want to enact legislation for persons with disabilities, and so we want to include that in the general orders and review the labor code and those other policies that we have that would include persons with disabilities. By when? December 2025. And the Ministry of Health and Social Services will take the lead on this one. I think we would have had another one, but we actually didn't get a chance to discuss it. And it looks at the disability policy. And so we could include that in the legislation, where we said we would review general orders and the labor code. Thank you all very much.
That was everybody. Was that everybody? No? No, they tried to stay quiet. No, 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 it doesn't go like that. No, 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 no. No, no, no. We require an individual. That was a nice try, though.
I could come up here and say this afternoon that everything has already been said, but I will not do that. I will just go into a brief discussion. We had our priority, make sure that our public buildings have ramps and railing and elevators. For example, we're now seeing a trend where some of the existing buildings don't have ramps and the steps are very steep. We look at some of us are getting older and we'll be faced with these challenges. For example, we look at this same Treasury building and this building here. We cannot get up here without, you know, it's pain in our knees. The Treasury, sometimes you're going down the step, you have to be careful you don't slide down. We want to be able to put little highlighters on the tip of the step so that persons can see. We also look at actions to be taken, new and existing building, and bring public building up to established standard. For example, the building code of Montserrat speak to address some of these things. But what happened? They are not implemented. So we want to be able to look at existing building and new building. Some of us from the understanding that if the buildings now are being designed, you have a process in which they go through. If they are not ably ready for that, they don't pass the pans them. Then they go back to the drawing board. And this will be done by new building with immediate effect and existing building by 2026. It could be quicker, but we have to look at, you said don't talk about money. We have to look at the funds to address these situations. The lead agency with the government of Montserrat. Priority 2, enforcing building code to ensure compliance of people who are differently able. Actions to be taken by this year end. Because it's an urgent situation for persons, immediate effect. Because it immediate mean like, no. I do believe that anything need doing, do it right away. Get on it. The government of Montserrat and the physical planning unit and other stakeholders. When I say other stakeholders, as I said, the plan have different process to pass. You go to the environmental part, they look at the environment. You look at the fire safety, that is a hazard we tend to forget. We look at the town and country planning. They are the lead agency, but sometimes plan do get slipped by with not proper addressing the situation. It's only when you look at a building coming down Davy Hill, you see the closeness and the proximity, the building just outside the stop sign there, that too, don't have no access. And we look at the road work, especially we think about the cluster in Braids, where you have Johnny, BBC, and coming out to credit union and the bread shop. We need proper access, like proper, maybe somebody said maybe a stoplight, but to tell people where to stop and where to come up. I myself as a chauffeur, when I'm coming out there, sometimes I find myself way in the road just to peek down here to see what's coming. Sometimes somebody, oops, you're in trouble. So, we look at, I just said that, slide down with me. By when? Soon. Because it brings a fear in us. Especially that little area there. It develops fear. And the lead person will be government, public works, and the police. We have a past police here. So we have to look at it. And actions to be taken. We have priority support, financial support to tailored assessment for people with disabilities. And when we say tailored assessment, one of my colleagues could get up and explain that for us properly because I was a bit busy speaking and I wanted to explain what she means by that. Because she had better. Miss Melda, could you assist me? Maybe in the past. Come.
What it is that a person with a disability may well need. What we need to do is look at what our policies are going to be saying, our procedures are going to be saying, and then we need to tailor our assessments so that they will significantly address those areas. So persons who may not have the level of experience that is needed to assess somebody will be guided by that, so the best information is then collated, so the best outcome is then given to that individual. That's why we talk about tailored.
And this will be done by 2025. And our director here just mentioned that she would assist the Montserrat Association with Disability. And I do hope that we could hold her accountable for that commitment, that she could assist this to another give subvention. But what I'm picking up from her, she's looking like she's giving more. And the priority would be health and social services and the government of Montserrat. That's it for us. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Idris. Well, we're coming up to 3:30 now, and I must remind you all not to leave without letting us have your priorities, because they will feed into the policy, the recommendations for the policy. So please don't leave without us getting that priorities. Either you've put it there or you've written it down. Make sure either myself or Sharice Allen gets those priorities. Okay, so there's a lot of food for thought from this morning and from this afternoon, and all that will be gathered together. Let me tell you what the next steps are. So the next steps are to represent your priorities in the policy as recommendations. As I said, we're going to hold another smaller consultation with the parents of children with disabilities, with adults with disabilities, and with NGOs. And that will be a separate forum for that. And we're going to raise public awareness. That seemed to find favour with everybody in this room on the policies and on the issue, and invite public views. So just like your views are being canvassed today, we're going to canvass public views, and all of that will lead into the next draft, hopefully the final draft of that policy, which will then go to Cabinet for approval, and hopefully beyond that, make a real difference to the lives of people with disabilities in Montserrat, which is after all why we're here. Okay, so thank you all. Before I can't let you go without doing a thought of thanks, though. So, of course, thanks to our speakers, Dr. Pass, Dr. Gardner, Dr. Julius, Steve Iceman, Weeks, Nyota Malker, Harjinder Jattal, and Craig Bruin. Thank you very much. You contributed, each of you, to a constructive day for us all. I must thank the Ministry, Health and Social Care, for funding this event, for PS Camille Thomas Gerald, the Honourable Secretary Dorset Hector, Director of Social Services, Mrs. Teresina Fergus, Dr. Clarice Barnes, and the Speaker of the House, Ms. Charlenia White. Let me send in a special thanks to Dr. Paz and Sharice Allen as members of the Planning Committee to make sure that this event succeeded, and a special thanks to Sharice Allen for her hands-on approach, efficiency, which was invaluable. Thank you very much, Sharice. To the tech teams also, you know, you always got your heart in your mouth when technology is involved in one of these, because it's bound to mess up, but it didn't. Went straight through. So thank you to the tech team. Thank you all. And that seems to be it for this afternoon. So thank you all. I left you to last for attending, for staying alert and awake after lunch. And yeah, so all that's left is for me to bid you all a good evening. And again, thank you for your contributions, and please have a pleasant evening tonight. Sorry? Oh, the listening public out there, to those who are listening online, we thank you for your attendance. If you have comments about this, please send it in to either myself or Sharice Allen, and we'll take your comments from the online viewers as well, and the listeners as well. That being said, let me wish you again a pleasant evening to one and all, and thank you for your attendance, and good night. Thank you very much.